Most bankers aren't ready to help you until after their third cup of coffee. But with Central National Bank's after-hours service, you don't have to wait for the bank lobby to open to get help. You can contact us from 6 to 8:30 in the morning or from 5 to 10 in the evening, and we'll connect you to a real, live, local person who can answer questions and fix problems 7 days a week. Bank different. Bank Central. Central National Bank. Member FDIC.
With threats to our nation waiting around every corner, adaptability is more important than ever. When conditions change without notice, quick strategic thinking is crucial. And with obstacles consistently impending, determination is essential in overcoming them. It's this willingness, decisiveness, and resilience that sets Marines apart. With our fighting spirit, we don't just fight battles, we win them. Marines are the constant our nation counts on to fight the unknown. And through adaptable problem solving, we do just that. Learn more at marines.com.
Hey, what's up, Blazer fans? Welcome to the Blazers Edge podcast. I am Tara Bowen-Biggs here as always with Blazers outsider Danny Marang. Dan, what's new?
Wow, I went from Danny to Dan. It was like I grew up in a span of like a second.
Yeah, I like to keep you on edge, not knowing what I'm going to call you. So you have to pay attention.
Yeah, no, that works. I mean, if the worst thing you call me is Dan or Danny, I think we're doing okay.
Well, on the air anyway.
Exactly. What happens off the air stays off the air. I'm doing pretty good. This is normally a time of the year where I'm just miserable as far as basketball is concerned, but little game in Africa. Get to see a little bit of basketball.
Did you watch that game?
Weather's been nice.
Did you wake up early and get your popcorn ready?
Yeah. I didn't wake up early so much as I DVR'd it and came back and got to it.
Oh, I woke up, man. I was so excited. I couldn't wait a second longer.
Yeah, I had a long night dealing with a broke down car the night before. So, I took my time and caught up on some much needed sleep.
So, did you enjoy the NBA Africa game?
Absolutely. Anytime you can watch Joel Embiid go to a pump fake, drive by, behind the back, step back, fadeaway jumper against live competition. I think it's good for all involved.
I felt like he was trying to do absolutely everything humanly possible that you could do.
And it was wonderful.
It reminded me of, I don't know, it reminded me of like the giant with like all the other people running around following him, because he just he just stood out so much compared to all the rest of the competition. Although there were go ahead.
Well, I'll say the one thing I was going to take away from that is I think I've retweeted like 2 or 3 different pictures from Joel Embiid's first interaction at NBA Africa in 2011. This guy has gone from the literally not playing basketball 7 years ago to like one of the best players in the league. Can you think of anything on this planet where you could do it for 7 years and be like, oh, okay, no, it's cool. I'm one of the best in the total world at this one particular thing.
Yeah, well, he must have put in his 10,000 hours, I guess. I don't know. Well, one of the things that I enjoy about watching Joel Embiid play is that even though he did come late to it, he clearly loves it. And that just comes through and the way he plays. I mean, he
what doesn't that guy love? That guy has fun like getting up and taking a shower. Like that dude is the happiest guy on the face of the planet. It's great.
Petting leopards or whatever kind of cats they were visiting. Yeah, I think the whole NBA Africa thing is really cool. And Aminu has spent a fair amount of time in Africa this summer because he had his camp several weeks before, or at least, the month before. He had his camp in Ibadan, and then they came back down to the Africa game in South Africa. It was part of the Nelson Mandela 100th birthday celebration. But just, I think part of the fun of watching the game is they show all the other activities that everybody was involved with during the week. And you get to see, they had Harrison Barnes going out and going to lunch. And just, it was fun to watch all that. But what did you think of our guy, Aminu? Did you enjoy his highlights?
Oh, poor Aminu, because he didn't have the best game.
Okay, so he had, what did he have, 5 steals and 6 rebounds and 2 points?
He was good on the defensive end.
He was.
Absolutely. Offensively, it was...
it was a struggle.
Yeah, that 3-pointer that
the end to tie the game. That was the best.
Oh God!
He missed it. For people who missed it, he missed it so bad. It went off the top of the backboard, and it was like the clock was ticking.
Nick Young was angry about that shot.
it was I mean, when he misses, he really.
It is a spectacular
he really misses,
miss.
and it keeps it interesting. But what I was watching, so he had, like I said, 5 steals in that game, and a few of them led to transition buckets. And he's not usually the person on the Trailblazers who starts those transition steals.
Or finishes with them either.
Right. Well, and he had at least one assist off of one of them too. Like he got back down and got an assist. But I just don't recall seeing him in that position. Of course, JaVale McGee was also shooting 3-pointers, so there was a lot of crazy stuff going on.
I
on
love
the court.
NBA in the summer because you get stuff like that where guys will try anything.
Yeah, I think he made one.
I can't remember not, but I was thinking of this. I saw Andre Drummond the other day said he's going every day at every practice or every shoot around wherever he's at. He's hitting 200 corner threes before he leaves.
Oh,
like Andre Drummond is all of a sudden shooting threes. If you remember a few years ago, there was a video that surfaced of Steven Adams at practice hitting like 12 straight threes or something like that. Like everybody talks about like non-shooters, and this is where you see like the experimentation stuff happen. For all these stupid montage workout videos, there's a lot going on in the offseason that these guys do. And it's really awesome when you get to see them try things. Because everybody talks about, well, this guy can do this guy can do this. In an NBA setting, in the regular season, playoffs, such like, you don't get the opportunity to do that. This is when these guys get a chance to actually, the hours they put in to try to figure this all out. This is when you get to try to see them try it. And the guys like Embiid, they will. Like, hey, I learned a new move the other day. Let me go ahead and book this in. Like, he went to a camp with I think it was Hakeem 2 years ago when he first came back from his first injury, and there was a clip of him doing a dream shake almost perfectly.
No, that's one of the things that fascinates me about him is
footwork you've ever seen.
How much of basketball he's learned from YouTube and how well he can recreate it. It's really astounding.
Oh, he's a sponge.
Yeah, and I don't mean that like in a mean way,
sponge.
like, oh, he learned it off YouTube. No, he's a guy who watches tons and tons and tons and tons of video. But wait, to bring it to the Trailblazers, can you think about in years past, in summers past, a player who has added something? I know Wesley Matthews always used to add something. But like, what's the one thing that is the best example to you?
Wes Matthews is by far the best
when
example.
He added the
not
three?
Even just in Blazers history. No, all the way through.
Okay.
Like,
just
this is a guy who was an undrafted. Yeah, he was an undrafted free agent. Goes to camp, does everything he can to stick with the Jazz. Works with Jeff Hornacek day after day after day to be able to find a way to stay on the court, to develop a 3-point shot. He becomes successful at that. Well, now he's a legit 3-and-D guy. But beyond that, what does he have? So then he learns, how to attack a closeout, little pump fake and little pull-up. Then he adds a hesitation dribble and the ability to get to the rim. Nothing special, but just one go-to move. And every year. And then he adds the post game. I mean, everybody remembers what he did to James Harden in the playoffs in 2014. They played fine James Harden on defense, and West posted him up with something like, was it 6 straight possessions? Like, from a guy who literally had no post game coming into the NBA to posting up a guy in the playoffs. Like, that's insane. Like, that level of development, that's like, I think that skews the board for everybody else is because a guy like Wes Matthews or a guy like Joel Embiid can develop something that they never had previously. So, not necessarily simply, but they make it look simple, that I think a lot of people think that, if you just put in the time, you can make this happen. Well, you can make this stuff happen. Like that video of Steven Adams shooting those threes. All of these guys in the NBA can shoot in practice.
Right.
It's a very, very different circumstance.
Or from their driveway. We have a really very nice history of Nick Stauskas hitting a whole bunch of threes from his driveway.
Yeah, exactly. Like, these guys are unbelievable. Like, even some of the worst shooters in the league will, in practice, they will just sit there and can from all over the floor. Like, it's nuts. But this is why I love the summertime, is you get to see some of that experimentation, and you see that trial and error and where these guys have developed these things. And I think those are my favorite things that come out of every summer. For specifically, let's look at a recent one, Damian Lillard, the ability to get to the free throw line. Like it didn't just like the refs didn't all of a sudden start giving him credit. He learned how to adjust his body, how to jump later. That's another thing that gets overlooked when you talk about like fine tuning mechanics and stuff like that. Somebody can be really good at getting to the rim, but like when you take off and where you take off from, if you go too early, if you go too late, if you go off quote unquote the wrong foot, there's no wrong foot. There's either right footed or left footed. But how some people interpret that to the best possible scenario to generate free throws or to get a better shot opportunity, like these little microcosms that get changed around that make it so much more beneficial. I think a lot of that stuff doesn't necessarily show forth night in, night out until you look at this, midway through the season. You're like, wow, Dame went from not getting really to the free throw line all that well to being one of the best in the NBA at it.
Well,
like, where did that come from?
Maybe Aminu will start generating transition offense from his steals.
Hey, I'd be
Maybe
all for it.
I
would love the Blazers to be able to generate some free points.
One little note for people who are interested in off-season stuff. I listened to the Hoops Hype podcast with Alex Kennedy, and he had Drew Hanlon on. Drew Hanlon, who works with Myers Leonard, amongst other people, also Joel Embiid and lots of other
Jason
guys.
Tatum and Kelly Oubre.
So fascinating, and if people
there.
are interested in that type of thing, it was a really good, deep look in to how he does his work and how he chooses the players that he works with, and how much he has to believe in and like a player before he chooses to work with them. And it was just really good. So if people are looking for content over the summer, because I know things slow way down, that's the Hoops Hype podcast, and Alex Kennedy interviewing Drew Hanlon. I thought it was fascinating. But let's talk about somebody in the Blazers organization who's also been very busy this summer, giving lots and lots of interviews. Like everywhere you turn around, we hear from the Blazers. Oh, I keep wanting to call him general manager, but he's not the general manager.
President of
Basketball Operations, PBO.
The Pro Bono.
The PNO, the PBO. Neil Olshey recently sat down with Brooke Olzendam and talked about this offseason. Lots of nuggets in the interview. So I pulled out a couple that I would love to get your thoughts on. And I bet you've got lots to share. I bet you've got thoughts, Dan. Am I right about that?
No, never.
Well, so I'm just going to dive right in. One thing he talked about was the trade exception, which recently expired. His what exact words were? We thought for sure the Allen Crabbe trade exception would have huge value in the league. And like I said, teams are just not in the business of giving up quality players the way they were, because I think everybody understands they're going to have to pay the freight this summer for what everybody did back in 2016. And there just wasn't as many pieces in the marketplace to do the absorption deals we've seen in the past. Lots going on there.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for that, Neil. That was a pretty good Olshey. I'm not even gonna lie. You get the inflection just
Thank
right.
You, Dan.
So a lot of things to take away there. So the first part is they got it dead wrong.
That they thought that the trade exception would have huge
TP,
value.
yeah.
Like what I was trying to figure out, what did
That's
this
what they're
mean?
saying. That's what they're saying publicly.
Right.
And
I mean, does that imply that other teams were like, we have players that we don't want to have on our roster anymore, so we can trade them to Portland because look, they have this big trade exception that they can use. Is that what he was implying?
There's a couple of ways that I'm looking at. There's a couple of ways that I'm looking at this. That could be one way, but one of the things that I was thinking about as I read this over and over and over again, because I was just pushing my face into my hand as he said it. How many times have Neil Olshey and the Blazers recently admitted mistakes?
0.
Why is it all of a sudden this one is something that they're admitting a mistake on?
I don't know. Do you have a good conspiracy theory?
I think this is because it's such a minute thing that they could throw this out there as like, hey, we made a mistake. Sorry. That's something that everybody has been asking for, is to have Neil Olshey admit mistakes. They're never going to admit the mistakes of 2016.
I know that was amazing how he turned it around like everybody else.
Everybody understands they're going to have to pay the freight this summer for what everybody, I'm doing air quotes right now, did back in 2016. No, not what everybody did, Neil. What you, Mitch Kupchak, and somebody else did. That's the extent of it. There's like 4 teams that made horrifically just terrible, awful, no good, brutal contract offers.
Not everybody. Definitely not everybody. Well, and I asked.
So yeah, that's my conspiracy theory about it.
That's
because
interesting. So you think that maybe they're like, we'll claim this one. We'll claim that we got this one wrong.
Because in the reality, at least in my mind, like we talked about it off air a ton. Like I never thought the TPE was really going to be used. There was no way with the writing that was on the wall that they were willing to add money. And now, had they made a move like moving Harkless or moving Myers or something along that line, to where bringing in a contract like Wilson Chandler's that was $13 million as opposed to Harkless's 10, but they got a first-round pick out of it, and then they could find a way to slash that payroll at the trade deadline to get under the tax line, which would be doable. It would be difficult, but be doable. The extra first-round pick may have been enough to justify doing it. But the idea that the TPE was ever going to be used just...
Well, right. I mean, if they were...
It never made sense.
Why wouldn't they have just kept Alan Crabb then? I mean, were they worried about Alan Crabb clogging up Pat Connaughton's development? I mean, that's my next question.
No. I think they immediately knew after Crabb got paid that he wasn't going to be the answer and that they needed to move on from him sooner rather than later because his development was going to stagnate. They needed to go quickly because it was going to get... I mean, that's like we're at the point right now where Evan Turner's contract is unmovable. Mm-hmm. Like it's
really, is it? I mean, they moved. Was it Mozgov's?
Okay.
What's the difference?
Everything is movable if you attach a 20 point per game score to it.
Okay. Okay. So that's why, because I've seen people talking about, well, they've moved, all the other bad contracts have been moved.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. You could move Turner's contract maybe if you put Collins and like a first together.
Okay. So they've been moved because they've been attached to valuable things, which Portland has never been able to do.
Mozgov was attached to D'Angelo Russell. Mm-hmm. Like Russell, what do you think of him, notwithstanding? He was a top-tier pick on his rookie deal who was showing the potential to be a 20-point-per-game scorer and a if not a prototypical scoring guard in the NBA, a guy that could be that secondary option. And if you're the Nets, you were looking to get young talent for taking on those bad deals. So, yeah. I mean, you want to talk about the price of freight? There you go.
There was just a lot of good, colorful phrases used in that whole tune, like the absorption deals we've seen in the past. Is that like a technical term that they use? I wasn't sure. Like he said it confidently enough that I thought maybe that's something that they throw around when they're like, "Well, what about if we had to do an absorption deal?" As opposed to one that was just made up on
I'm sure they say that, like, they say absorption deal. They say, "Hey, we'll take your crap." Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I bet you that's probably what they avoid. Still, though, my favorite word is much, much, much clearer. Good old sublimate.
Oh yeah, right.
Sublimate.
No, I still bifurcate is still my favorite. I'm still gonna. I mean, that was from a previous press conference, but that's still my favorite word of the year.
I think he's trolling us at this point.
It could be. Well, let's move on to the next thing. The other thing that he talked about, another thing that he talked about, which I alluded to, was here's this next one about not wanting to hold on to somebody so long that the player who is coming up and developing behind them wouldn't be able to flourish. So this was where he threw Ed Davis under the bus, or just was like, we didn't need Ed or whatever, like just kind of acted like Ed never brought anything to the team, which was like, okay. He said,
not a fan of this.
We feel like we have internal solutions that will eventually be upgrades, and that was the deal. Ed is a veteran, and you can't bring Ed back and ask him to take on a reduced role. But if Ed comes back and plays the same role, it sublimates guys on the roster that we think have a higher ceiling and that eventually can bring more to the table. So I get the logic behind it. And then
I don't.
Well, I mean, if they're really trying to develop, they got to give people minutes. I mean, that
you're a team bereft of talent, and you're letting talent walk for basically nothing.
Right. But I think,
and it's not. It's this. If Ed Davis was actually in the way of Zach Collins developing, then I could believe that. But there's not 6, 7 front court guys.
He wasn't in the way. He was helping 4. It. Yeah. He was a huge, important part of it.
So, and this may come as a surprise to people, but there was a name that was pretty much out of the entire press conference. I only heard his name mentioned twice, and it was about the veterans coming to Summer League, and that's Myers Leonard. Mm-hmm. I think the ulterior motive here for letting Davis go is that they want Myers to play. And that may sound crazy to some of you. And when I say they, I mean Neil Olshey. Mm-hmm. I believe he wants Myers to play to show that he either has value or he doesn't, so that they can either capitalize on that value either on the floor or in the trade market, or they can find a way to move on from him. I think this is like a make or break, and I think they want to see what they have in him as far as asset value. As far as the basketball side of things, what's the most common critique for Portland outside of consistent wing play? Is it shooting? Because I think it's shooting.
Well, aside from Dame and CJ, you mean, right?
I mean, yeah. So what does Myers Leonard possibly give you? Shooting. So by moving Ed Davis, yes, you allow Zach Collins to get a few more minutes. It's not like Zach Collins is going to take Ed Davis's 18 minutes. That's not happening, folks. Like, you're not going to see Zach Collins playing 36 minutes a night. If the Trailblazers are, a lot of things have happened, and it's either gone really well and Zach Collins is a future all-star, or things are going very badly. Because for him to get going from playing 16 minutes and giving you 4 and 3 a night to giving you 36 minutes a night, that's kind of a stretch.
Okay, but I want to go back to what you're saying about Myers, though, because Myers, like, why did they if he's talking about being so concerned about player development, CJ was one example of somebody that they waited too long to put in. Like, Myers doesn't fit into that whole storyline. Myers is kind of an outlier.
He does and this is another thing that Olshey brought up during the press conference, the difference between trust and talent. I don't believe the coaching staff in Portland has much trust in Myers Leonard anymore. If you talk to guys around the league, if you talk to guys that work out with Myers Leonard, who work out with him in the summer and scrimmage against him, they will tell you that Myers Leonard is plenty talented. There's not a talent deficiency there. People may laugh, people may giggle, people may question that. I don't care. These are guys, these are players and executives and personnel around the league that I have talked to. Like, Myers Leonard does not have a talent deficiency. And I think what Olshey was alluding to there was, if Ed Davis isn't there, if somebody else isn't there to take minutes away from Myers, that there's no other solution, that you just trust the talent and let it find a way. Jeff Goldblum it. Just let Myers find a way.
So moving on from Ed isn't just about...
was twofold.
Isn't just about getting out of the way of Collins's incredible development that we're going to see this year. It's going to be about, like you said, like sort of make or break with Myers. Either what he needed was time to do it, or he can't.
Like, if you wanted me to rank it in things that meant the most to the Blazers, it's probably 1, money, 2, Zach Collins, 3, forcing the coaching staff's hand with Myers Leonard.
Well, what did you think about when he said that it took too long to get CJ into the rotation? Do you agree?
I mean, in a sense, sure, but not over Wes Matthews. If he's talking about over Aaron Aflalo after Wes Matthews tore his Achilles, okay. But then again, he has to remember that he was the guy that made the move for Aaron Aflalo.
Right.
So...
yeah, that one didn't ring real true with me. I was like, I think, because like CJ's whole first year, he was injured. And then the second year, he got a little here, got a little there. Did he get injured again?
I heard rumblings from out of practice that he looked good when he was in his first 2 years, but he did have problems with his feet, and he did have an incumbent two-way terrific player.
Yeah, a good incumbent
in
that,
Wes Matthews
that
in front
was
of him.
that was well matched with the rest of the main people
Yeah, this
on the
isn't
roster.
an Ed Davis situation.
Yeah.
Like Ed Davis is a reserve big, and granted, a fantastic reserve big. Wes Matthews was a true dyed-in-the-wool starter that damn near any team in the league would take.
Yeah.
He was a 40% three-point shooter who could guard 1 through 3.
Yeah.
Like, what more do you want?
Yeah, that one didn't ring real true with me, but I wanted to gauge what you thought about that.
Yeah, no. Like, no.
Not that we have to agree.
Wes
but
wasn't. Got to remember when you're talking about Neil Olshey, it's about his guys. Wes Matthews was not his guy.
CJ's his guy.
Nick Batum, not his guy. LaMarcus Aldridge, not his guy. CJ was his draft pick. Dame was de facto his draft pick. Myers Leonard, his draft pick. Zach Collins, his draft pick. Like, his draft picks are his preciouses.
Yeah.
That's his ring right there. Like, he will not let those guys. Will Barton and Alan Crabb. And here's the crazy thing here is that he gave away Will Barton, one of his guys, for Aaron Aflalo. So you were going to talk about like trying to create space and make room for your guys and guys that showed out. Like, I heard a lot about Will Barton at practice.
Right. Not only did he get rid of Will Barton, he also didn't give really CJ any more playing time until Wes went down.
Yeah. So I question that a little bit. Like,
good point.
So yeah, that's kind of weird right there. I get what he's saying because it sounds really good in hindsight. Like, hey, you know what? We knew CJ was great from day one. We should have got him out there earlier.
Oh well, so
like,
there's another thing that they said they did wrong. That he said that they did wrong. So there's two things
again. But what impact does that have? It's
Right.
very, very, very minimal. And neither has anything to do really with the current state of the team.
Yeah, so more rhetoric than anything else.
Yeah.
I have one last question on Neil's press conference, and I just knew as soon as he said that, I just could picture you firing up your computer and start making your list. He said, we identified 5 wings that all had playoff experience or veteran wings we thought we could get for the taxpayer mid-level exception, and they all got more than the taxpayer mid-level. What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
So who do you think those 5 wings were?
Okay, so give me a second here. I just thought of something. I did have...
And tell me that you did immediately fire up your computer and start going and making your list.
I did. I started to look at it, and...
you did the, like, crack your knuckles thing and then moved your
yeah,
fingers
it was full on,
around.
like, wait a second. So, like, I actually put it in a tweet that Olshey said in his interview with Brooke Olsen that Portland targeted 5 wings in free agency. He recruited and pitched them all, and all of them got more than the 5.3 taxpayer MLE they had to offer. And now I have to go check what 5 playoff veteran wing free agents got more than 5.3 million this offseason.
So what's the list?
Now, I had responses that included Hezonja, Bellinelli, McDermott, Ellington, Joe Harris, Tyreek Evans, Bielitsa, Dante Cunningham, James Ennis, Ersan Ilyasova, Anthony Tolliver, Gerald Green, Rudy Gay, Gary Harris, Will Barton. I think that was the full list of everybody that was sent to me. And I narrowed it down really to... There's a ton of guys you can remove there. If you're talking about playoff caliber guys, throw Hezonja off there. He's never been in the playoffs. Dante Cunningham is a power forward. Stop. Anthony Tolliver, again, power forward. Stop. So you start getting down to like who got close. Well, Wayne Ellington was $6.2 million. Tyreek and
I love
JJ
Wayne
Redick.
Ellington.
And I mean, again, these are guys who I think would help Portland a ton. Tyreek Evans, $12 million 1 year. Redick, $12 million 1 year. Ariza was the big money guy, 1 year, $15 million. Rudy Gay, 1 year, $10 million. McDermott, I think, was right on the line as far as like what you would consider. He did get some playoff time with Oklahoma City Thunder, but I don't know. He got paid decently well. He was the only one that really got multiple years out of anybody. He got $7 million or a little over $7 million a year on a 3-year deal. Marco Bellinelli got a 2-year, $12 million deal, so he got $6 million per. All of those guys are more than the 5.3 that Portland had to offer, if you believe that. So then you take a look at that.
So you think that there just wasn't even there's like if you were working in the war room there during free agency and they said, Dan, go get us a list of 5 wings that have playoff experience who we can reasonably expect to get for the mid-level exception, which for us is $5.3 million. You would have been like,
yep.
Who? And you maybe could have come up with McDermott, Ellington, Bellinelli, Mbamute.
Well, remember, I left Mbamute out because he took less.
He's the one
than what Portland had to offer. Yes.
So one person you think would have actually maybe been. He's about the only one.
If that was somebody who, again, and here's the other thing: is Mbamute took less and is playing in Los Angeles, and not for the Lakers, for the Clippers. Mm-hmm. So you're not getting the big-time exposure of the LeBron Lakers. You're the Clippers, where you've got tax hell in Southern California, worse than a situation in Oregon. And for everybody who's going to get irritated about the economics and millionaires paying taxes, I don't care. I'm talking about free agency. That stuff matters to these guys. The difference between playing in Texas or Florida or basically anywhere else in the country is a massive difference in money.
So you have a hard time believing that there were 5 wings that all had playoff and veteran experience that could have been gotten
that were going to be
for that price.
Yeah, I don't think those guys ever really existed in the first place. Mm-hmm. Now, they could have written 5 guys down. I don't doubt that at all. But there was a point in that where Olshey said, like, it's not like we went down our list and got progressively worse guys or less valuable guys on our list. Well, yeah, you did. Because you didn't get any of those 5. If you wanted the other guys, you would have had them on your list.
Well, I took that to mean that they just pivoted to a different strategy, which was to get shooters.
Which was to get a wing-ish Nick Stauskas on a vet minimum on the first day. Like, that's weird.
Yeah, it seems like if they would have taken a little bit longer. That was kind of like... Oh, okay.
And then you look at the order of events. Gary Trent Jr. all of a sudden's got, his contract done, and that's it came out of the MLE money. Mm-hmm. Like,
yeah,
they were like I had to look at the sequence of events, but if I'm remembering it correctly, I believe Gary Trent Jr. got his money before Mbamute signed with the Clippers. I'll have to double check that. I'll verify it before we post this, but I'm almost certain that's the case, and that. I mean, that seems a little bit weird. Like, again, you don't ever hear about the leaks coming out of, or you don't ever hear anything leaked about Portland unless the Blazers want it leaked. Uh-huh. But I never heard the Blazers tied to any wings other than Hazonia, and that was a cursory mention through Woj.
Yeah.
So
that we're not even sure if it was a real thing or if it was a slip up, because that was when Woj accidentally tweeted it out that Portland had come to an agreement with it, and then he immediately followed up with New York. So there's a bit of mystery behind there. So are you developing a conspiracy theory about what this story is all about? What it actually really means? Like what their plan was?
It sounds good. Mm-hmm. It sounds good.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it. It's not pretty. So I just looked, and Gary Trent Jr. signed. He signed his contract beforehand.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So Gary Trent Jr. signed on the 6th, and then there was a couple things that I noticed from Olshey's press conference where he highlighted July 5th as like the day. He mentioned July 5th a couple different times. Okay. Well, just coincidentally enough, a day later, Gary Trent Jr. signed his deal. So they pivoted pretty damn hard to away from those 5 wings very quickly. If July 5th was the day, and then, your second round pick who doesn't have guaranteed money all of a sudden had a 3-year guaranteed money deal out of the MLE that you were supposedly using for those 5 wings, or to pick up one of those wings from those 5.
How much of any of that was dependent on what Nurkic did? Are they completely separate, or did they have to be taken into account together?
No, I think they were separate entities.
Uh-huh. It couldn't have been like they'd reached a place with Nurkic where they realized how much they were going to have to spend. And
I think they knew a while ago. Uh-huh. Remember, we had talked about this off the air, whether it was the toxic method was obviously Nurkic getting the $12 million or the qualifying offer. and you asked me what number was the right number for Nurkic, and it was 12 million. And if you really pressed me and broke the fingers, then 13. But beyond that, I wasn't budging. And lo and behold, the number they landed on was slightly over 12. So I think they've known that number for a couple weeks.
Okay. Well,
between the Blazers and Nurkic's agent.
Right. Anything else you want to remark on about the press conference?
So, it's not a secret that I don't necessarily care for how Neil Olshey gets defensive about a lot of things. When, he was the one that created the situation, or is the face for putting himself in those situations with the summer of 2016. But when he started to talk about the first 4 minutes of that interview with Brooke.
Yeah, that's right. That
was a very different Neil Olshey than I had seen in any of the other press conferences, interviews, or anything like that. He was endearing. It was really strange. I instead of finding myself squinting, rolling my eyes, sighing, or face palming, he had me nodding in agreement for a minute.
What do you think it was about what he was saying that made you feel that way?
It sounded honest and genuine.
Okay.
And I know that sounds awful, but I just don't like him and Danny Ainge, Doc Rivers are three guys that if they're talking, I just don't trust them. They are some of the best in the league, and this is going to sound like a shot, but I think it's credit to them because I think that's their brand.
Yeah, that's what they're supposed to do.
They are continual positivity salesmen, and they're good at it. It's weird. I don't know how to put it any other way. I thought that the first couple minutes were very, very different than anything I had seen from him previously when discussing the Blazers.
Huh. I'm curious to. Now I got to go back and watch it again because I'm wondering what it was about it. Because I did hear some people talk about when he did a few of the summer league interviews, where he just was kind of came in and just kind of talked off the top of his head. I did hear a few people say, well, he seemed really pretty genuine in there. Like he wasn't trying to sell us something. So maybe it was just, because it was the beginning of the interview and they were settling in and he hadn't gotten fully
it wasn't on the
sales
scripted
pitch
questions yet.
Mode yet, and he hadn't had to get defensive. He had to know Brooke did a great job, and he had to have known all those questions were coming, and she did a really good job of asking him.
Yeah, those questions, listen, this isn't a knock on the Trailblazers. Again, this is how it was done. Brooke is an employee of the Portland Trailblazers. For anybody who doesn't understand that, the Brooke works for the Portland Trailblazers. This is not an interview where Neil Olshey was pressed by a reporter.
Yeah, so it wasn't going to be the hard-hitting, gotcha.
No, and those questions are going to be vetted. They're going to be understood. They're going to set the table for Neil Olshey to lay out basically his State of the Union or his agenda. That's what that was. And I honestly, I think it was better than I anticipated. Obviously, there were some things in there that made me just, huh? Obviously, the TPE being the biggest one. But I thought Brooke did a fantastic job. And like I said, there were times in that interview where Olshey had me nodding my head, and that's the first time maybe that's ever happened. So, if he was more like that more often, I think he would probably get a lot more slack. Maybe not a lot more, but a little bit more. I know it's impossible, but if they ever came out and admitted the mistakes of 2016, and the reason you can't do it are multiple. Obviously, you're talking about guys that are still on your roster, and you're calling them a mistake. That's not going to go over well. But if he's here beyond those contracts and he ever talks about those publicly, I think that would go a long way towards repairing a lot of the issues. As weird as that may seem.
I was really hoping you were going to work sublimate in there somehow. I was going to try to, but I really can't. To be honest, I cannot figure out how to use that word correctly in a sentence, and I wouldn't want to try. But okay, so the off season is what it is. Barring some, total shock, the deals are done. The major things have gone kind of a snoozer. League wide, there was a lot of excitement, but in Portland, I personally thought it was a little bit of a snoozer.
Crickets.
I wrote a thing Blazers Edge about it today, asking people what they thought was the most exciting Blazers offseason. And I chose the word exciting carefully because I didn't necessarily mean it needed to be the best, just like which one was the most exciting. So in your opinion, what was the most exciting Blazers offseason?
I kind of rule out obviously the one that I wasn't alive for, and that's setting up the Blazers championship year. I was a child when Clyde Drexler was drafted, so those are all great and everything. But for me, like the formative years of my Blazerhood, I think it was 97, the groundwork that was laid for the 99-2000 team. So you get Pippen, you get Rasheed, like you start really building
Pippen didn't
this
come
franchise.
until 99.
I'm sorry, it was 99. Thank you.
Yeah. That was one of the most popular answers was 1999. That was when I brought up, because that was the year they traded 6 players for Scottie Pippen, and then they got Stacey Augmon back, which was the best part of it. I loved that.
The plastic.
Yeah. I loved that.
Yeah.
That was definitely exciting.
Yeah, that was a fantastic one. 2006 and then 2007. Brandon Roy for me was huge. Like trading Tyrese Thomas and Victor Kriapa for LaMarcus Aldridge had me through the roof. I had watched
you were truly excited about that. Like you thought it was exciting. The definition of what I was asking was like, oh, this is exciting. What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was a huge LaMarcus fan at Texas. Ironically, at the time, I thought he'd be more Marcus Camby than anything else because he was a Big 12 Defensive Player of the Year, real long, lean as could be.
Yeah,
made Kevin Durant look skinny. So I was stoked for that. Like I was like, oh man, this guy could be one of a Marcus Camby type player. If he ever gets an offensive game, great, cool, awesome. And then Brandon Roy immediately became one of my favorite players of all time. And then who could forget Honk Once or Honk Twice?
Yeah, 2008. Was that the year?
So going into that year with Odin, or excuse me, 2007. Yeah.
He was drafted in 2007.
Going into that year, I remember the draft lottery. And when it came down to the final 2, and holy crap, the Blazers got the first pick. I remember screaming and yelling, jumping up and down. I lived down the street from my parents, and I ran down the street to my dad's house, to my mom and dad's house. And I remember my dad was up in his shop working, and he had his stereo on. I'm screaming over the top of it, "We got the first pick!"
So that's 2007 when they got the first. Okay, setting up the excitement for the whole rest of the summer.
Yeah, so it was just that feeling of winning that lottery when it was. I don't think if you weren't old enough or you weren't really watching the NBA then, the Greg Oden and Kevin Durant were both can't miss. Like people
I just
talk
got
about
in a fight with somebody about this last night.
It's
God, never going away.
The idea that Kevin Durant was a can't miss prospect who was going to win scoring titles, like that was the hyperbole that was tossed around him. Like, but obviously it wasn't. And they still took Odin over him. Like that's the level of which Odin was celebrated. Like he was going to be the next, David Robinson. He was going to just take the Blazers along with Brandon Roy and LaMarcus Aldridge to the promised land. So that whole period, along with the setup of the 99-2000 team, was those are easily my two favorites.
Yeah, those were two popular answers. Yeah, 2007. I hadn't even thought of the added excitement of 2007, where first the lottery happened and then the draft happened, and because I was thinking about the draft, but I hadn't thought about the extra excitement of the lottery. And I love the idea of young Danny winning the golden ticket and running outside and running over to your parents. We got the golden ticket.
Yeah, that's basically what it
felt
was.
Like.
Yeah, I mean, it was insane. I literally was jumping up and down, screaming and yelling. Like I was a maniacal child at that point. I just I could not believe it.
Well, you were also pretty.
Yeah,
you were pretty young at that time too. Yeah, I wasn't as into the minutia of what the team was doing back in those days. So, like, you know, had I had more time to think about it and, you know, read the whole entire history of it, I think that would have been one of my answers. But the thing that I said was I thought that the summer that LaMarcus left was really exciting because there were a lot of changes and it was a lot of new people that we had to figure out what was going on. I wasn't necessarily saying it was the best summer, but I did think it was exciting because there was a lot going on.
Yeah, honestly, I like busy summers.
Yeah.
busy summers are fun.
That's why we're looking back, you know, 20 years to try to remember what that feeling was.
I saw some people were talking about 2015 was a busy summer. I don't know if 2015 was a busy summer as much as it was just an exodus.
No, that was the one I said because there was a lot going on, and in terms of exciting, there was a lot going on.
I don't know if that's really exciting.
Yeah, well, for me it was because I mean I was sad to see LaMarcus go, but I understood that there was going to be a new team built around Damian, and I really, 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 really liked Damian, and I was excited to see what that was going to be like. And I just, for me, I also just really like learning about new players, and that was, you know, an opportunity to learn about a lot of new players because a lot of new players came in. But you know, there's no one right answer. That's why this is a good question, because there's no one right answer. Of course, you probably think there's a right answer, but I don't believe that there's one right answer. Well, I think
there's always a right answer.
Yeah, and it's yours, right? Yeah, no. I don't know.
That's not what I implied with it whatsoever.
No, but I know that's what you were thinking.
Oh, okay.
I'm not wrong about that, am I?
Fair enough.
Well, should we leave it off there this week?
Yeah, let's touch on one last thing. Vegas odds came out because we love gambling here, and more than likely gambling is going to be legal here in the state of Oregon and sports betting here very, very soon.
I have a whole host of things we need to discuss about that. Not tonight. Because I'm trying to understand the ethics that are the way that things are going to be, how we're going to have to like suddenly,
discuss it openly. Yeah, it's going to be a little weird for some people that aren't used to the openness of it. But I'll tell you what, if you're a soccer fan at all, you've been exposed to it the entire time you've been watching soccer, particularly, I mean, outside of the U.S.
Well, I think there's going to be a lot of unintended consequences, not all of which I necessarily think are going to be bad. Like, I don't mean like that ominous, but I think there are going to be a lot of things that happen that nobody could have predicted, and I think a lot of them are going to have ethical implications. But let's talk about the odds that came out today as an introduction.
So there we go. This will be the opening teaser trailer into the further gambling discussion.
Yeah.
So Portland came in at 41.5. That's the over under. For anybody not familiar, that's not a projection.
Right. Okay.
That's a betting line.
These are the things that they think people are going. These are based on how they think
these
people
are
going to set
bets. Yes, this is to entice bets. This is not a projection.
Which is why the Lakers are ridiculously high.
Depending on which book you look at, but yes, there have been some that where one was the Laker was the over was 62.5. So and then I think the Las Vegas sports book, which is basically the prominent Las Vegas book, that has Portland at 41.5, I believe had the Lakers at 48.5.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is not a take the under, take the over discussion, because this isn't the 27.5 that came out in 2014-15, where that was, you want to get a betting line going, there you go. I think this is a fair line. The early simulations that I've run have Portland at 43.5, or just under 43.5, 43.4 is what I've gotten through the simulations, and I'm running that through using last year's schedule. So once this year's schedule comes in, I'll go ahead and run it again and see what pops out.
So you take you add the new players and take out the old players and run the simulations based on last year's schedule. That's how that goes. That's how you get your numbers.
That's what I do every year until the new schedule comes out. And once the new schedule comes out, and I have a couple things that I factor in for back-to-back travel, I do make my own manual adjustments
to like
for my final one. So if there's a back-to-back, say Sacramento and the Lakers, and you're going from Sacramento to play the Lakers on a Friday night or Saturday night, there's like an 85% chance if the game is marked as a win against Los Angeles, I'm going to change it to a loss.
Yeah. So
because Saturday night nightlife in Los Angeles on a back-to-back is damn near undefeated.
Do you also make manual adjustments based on player like improvement from one year to the next, or do you do any adjustments of the players' actual numbers? You do.
I do that on my own personal model when I'm trying to factor in like, okay, I don't use plus minus or RPM. I use my own metrics that I've worked with different people on. Like Zach Collins had a negative RPM last year. I don't think necessarily he's a negative RPM player. I would adjust him to a slightly above average RPM player. So a net zero as opposed to a negative. So I'll make slight adjustments like that. What I do is I have my model that's pure simulation. And then I have a copy of that I make my adjustments to.
Okay.
And that's ultimately what I end up using for my, like when I talk about my projections.
Yeah.
Like I'll put it out, before I put it out once at the beginning of the year and then I don't touch it. So I've got my one sanctity,
you
piece of
freeze
sanctity.
it in amber.
This is this is hey, here it is. You want receipts? Here it is.
Yeah.
It's there every year. And I've been right there pretty much every year. I had under last year. I had the Blazers at 46.8, so 47 last year.
Well, you were wrong about that, mister.
Yeah, I know. I had them, I think, at 42 point something the year before when they won 44. And I believe their over-under was 41.5 that year, too, or 40.5, I think was right where it was. But, so, yeah, for the most part, like I'm pretty good on this. So I think that Vegas the line here is good. I know a lot of people are like, oh, bet the over. Portland is due for some bad injury luck. And I know, knock on all the wood, but
don't say those things out loud.
I know the basketball gods, they come around. Like Portland has not had anybody of consequence miss serious time in almost 3 years. Like that's nuts. Like that's crazy.
Well,
so,
I mean, so like no one's had like a year long or season
2 month
ending
long thing
since
a
Wesley.
6-8 week. Yeah, I mean, Wes was it. Like nobody else has had anything.
Nurkic just
close
came
to
in like the last game of the season, so that didn't count. I mean, it was in the middle of the season.
And
Harkless
again, we're
was
only
in the
talking
middle.
about a couple weeks here or there.
Yeah.
Like 2 to 3 week injuries. Yeah, they suck. But we're not talking about, Chris Paul missing a huge chunk of the season, Steph Curry missing a huge chunk of the season.
Well,
like,
don't give the basketball gods any ideas.
Hey, I'm just saying, just statistically speaking, Portland is due. So, that 41.5 scares me a little bit. Like I said, I'm slightly higher on it. But again, these are numbers used to generate bets, and I think the reason why that number is so low is because Vegas, like any other person out there who's smart about building these models and to drive these bets, is thinking that Portland is due for some bad injury luck. And that will cause Portland to fall down. And at 41.5, if you're looking at how they structure it, they do have the Portland Trailblazers missing the playoffs. So, and that also mirrors what ESPN put out.
Well, we have a lot more to talk about. The other reason they put out these betting odds is to give us something to talk about in the offseason. And I think that for this week...
And we're thankful for that.
Yes, I think for this week, we've probably just about done as much as we possibly can. And hopefully next week somebody will put out something else, or somebody else will have a press conference that we can talk a whole bunch about. But I think we should probably wrap it up here. Do you have...
Yeah, when we're pining for press conferences, that's a problem.
I know. It was first it was when we were hoping for Michael Beasley, and now we're hoping for press conferences. That's what we've become.
Please, somebody talk to me.
Well, in any case, it's been good to talk to you. I can be found at TCB Biggs on Twitter, and you can find the Women's Hoops and Talks podcast at Hoops and Talks. Why don't you take us out of here?
All right, folks, you can find me on Twitter at DMarang, at DMARANG. We are a part of the Almighty Baller Podcast Radio Network. Like, subscribe, rate, and do all those good things on iTunes. Unsubscribe, rate, review, do it all over again. Because we'd like to take advantage of things. As far as things coming up for the Blazers Outsiders, the Rip City Cornhole Tournament is taking place August 19th at the Motor Center Parking Garage Region area. Joe, Shane, and I will be down there playing cornhole. If you want, you can get down there and get to take part of the
I still can't
Rip
understand
City.
this or picture this or understand what's going to happen. Like, I guess I'm just going to have to come see it. Like,
you're going to have to come down there and see it. It's not like it's that far. Come on now.
Is it like multiple cornhole games going on all at once?
Oh, yeah.
Leading up to, it's like an elimination tournament.
Yes.
And are these like already established competitive cornhole teams? Or
I don't know. I'm assuming there'll be some cornhole ringers. Like there are professionals out there. Like cornhole's actually on ESPN.
I saw that. When did that become a sport? I don't know. Yeah. Speaking of sports, Blazer 5 Gaming lost this weekend. I don't want to talk about it.
Yeah, see, I told you last week.
I know, it's your fault. It's your fault. If you hadn't pointed it out, it never would have happened. So thanks a lot, Dan. I was totally blaming this one on you. All right.
Yep. So that's it for us as far as the Outsiders crew. We got some other cool things coming up that we'll hopefully be able to announce here in the coming weeks. Other than that, folks, thanks for listening. Catch us next week. If you've got questions, hit us up on Twitter. Hit us up on Instagram, Blazers Edge, Twitter as well. And we'll talk to you all next week. Take care, everybody. Bye.